Yeah, I'm here with John Downey. So if there's anything I've learnt in my first few episodes is that people don't want to be educated. They love seeing shiny stuff. So I thought I'd find a man with robots and zero grazer. John Downey, yeah, thanks for having me along.
No problem,
John actually kind of owes me a little because I haven't talked to him about this, but I was mentioned in a video that he did with Lily actually, and my name was used in vain. That apparently I said it wasn't going to work, so it certainly has worked, and John's done pretty well. So we'll just have a look at his system and look what he's doing over here. So just tell us a little bit about what you got here, John, numbers and...
Well, I suppose when we started, Andre, when you had done the original plan, the plan was probably 150, 140 cows on 2 robots. We went beyond that. We went to probably 170, 175 on 2. Pushed it a little bit too hard. It was an elongated spring calving, so there was no hope of strong 6-week calving period because the robots just wouldn't take the volume of cows. So I think after year 2 we've put in 1 million litres every year, but 2 years ago we put in a third robot. So we've had no collect cows, no hardship, much easier on the animals, much less milk being spilled around the place in terms of cows waiting, a lot less stress in the sheds with the third robot, but not a huge increase in milk.
No.
Just more welfare, cow welfare. And look, the robots are probably designed for 65 cows. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we looked at the original plan, you were talking about, because you got fragmented farm, and so, you were talking about maybe doing a third grazing and 2/3 zero grazing. And if I remember correctly, my comment was that won't work.
Well, we never even tried it.
No, I said 2/3 grazing and a third zero grazing might work, but a third grazing and 2/3, it just won't work logistically, having the cows filled up with so much zero grazed grass and then trying to graze. And so you went 100% zero grazed.
Yes.
And one interesting thing at that time, I felt that you were highly conscious that the dilution of the fixed cost of the robot was important, and that came down to not diluting it with litres but with kilos of milk solids. Correct. Because that's what we're paid for.
Absolutely,
in Ireland,
yeah, absolutely. So our fat obviously started very high in terms of breeding. Solaris, as I said to you at the start, was the only bull I used at the start. Bought original cows from a couple of very good herds to start off with, and the first cross Solarises we had were just outstanding cows. They were.
Yeah, you started with black and white cows.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, but the first cross Kiwi out of Solaris were just. I can show you some of the figures inside.
So they would have been F12, J4, kind of like they were 3/4 Friesian and a quarter Jersey. Yeah.
But it wasn't even just that. It was Solaris himself.
Yeah.
I mean, we had cows in there doing up to 10,000 kilos of milk. We had loads doing 8,500. Yeah, absolutely.
I remember speaking to a guy in the UK who had a crossbred doing 72 litres at peak on the robot, being milked 3.4 times a day or something. So, it's just finding those animals and making sure you replicate them as much as you can.
You've asked about the shiny things, but in fairness to the robots, they don't just milk cows, it's the data that you get from them.
Yeah.
Like this year was the first year that probably our numbers were reached and we had gone beyond where we wanted to go. And I had a good lot of replacement heifers. I had 41 in calf out of 42. So, and they were all out of good dams, that's nice, so you were able to select based on what was in front of you, the cow bull, and you looked at her last few years, and you chose then the straw to give her. And as I said, we've gone probably too far in numbers, so I have noticed over the last number of years that we've gone backwards in kilos of milk solids per cow.
Because I thought we did the original budgets when we said, look, if we can get more control over the diet and go zero grazing, that we said our target was sort of around that 600 kilos of milk solids per cow.
Correct.
Probably 600 kilos of milk solids is a little too high now because it put you into the high banding for the nitrates.
Where we were sitting did suit. We were in the middle band, but we were at the top of it, were, and it was. But it's not nice to be going in reverse at the same time.
No.
And some of the things are outside my control, some are in my control.
But you know why that is?
Go on.
I haven't been here for 4 years.
I left myself open for that one a bit, Andre, to be fair. Yeah, there's probably an element of that in as well, keeping an eye on things. But I suppose weather has played that part, particularly at grass, losing, maybe droughts earlier on in lactation where you can't really recover from if you don't hit that peak. Like we didn't hit peak this year.
Well, you need to ensure that you have systems in place and contingencies in place to be able to deal with those things. You never know when those dry spells, I don't call them droughts, they're only dry spells in Ireland.
Dry spells, okay.
They're, you just need to have systems in place to make sure that those dry spells don't hurt you like they have been, I suppose. Oh yeah, and in your case, we're looking very much at you individually and making sure that some of those really important parameters are met. Like you have higher fixed costs, like you're running robots in a zero grazer, and you need to dilute those fixed costs with higher output.
2 bulls that I've chosen for next year, one I think is number 8 on the highest production on EBI, and the other is a Kiwi Cross, Flash Gordon, I think he's about 16th.
Right,
Serious production, because we can milk 3 times a day, we can milk 4 times a day if necessary. There's loads of capacity there for that, in terms of infrastructure for that, but you still need to do the production.
So do you milk 12 months?
Yes.
System drift there.
Yeah, it is, but
that's
really,
what it is with a robot, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's not, and you can see when we go to the front, they're just eating silage.
Do you come down to one robot working, or they all stay in play?
They all stay in play, and the reason I'm afraid to stop them is because any machine that stops like that, when you go to turn it on, you'll find there could be a problem, and all of a sudden then it's not that day you want the problem, because you're only turning it on because you need it. So it's nearly as well to keep it going.
Okay.
So the system is designed, and we've cut back the milkings and restricted the milkings based on the volume. So that's the beauty of the row. You can, if there's other ones inside it or not, you can just put them once a day if there's failings or whatever. So you have a good bit of control in that regard. But I'm not going to go out, like we pulled out of grazing, I suppose, 10th, 12th of November.
Right.
Obviously, our protein then starts to dip, no matter how good your silage is. Once that green stops coming in, you're starting to drop. But October was quite good. September was by far our best year. By far, the quality of the grass was absolutely tremendous.
It's the first time this year.
It was, it actually was the first time this year.
And what sort of covers do you hit the zero grazer at?
Okay, so this is probably debatable for people, but you have to remember, when we go into covers, it's not the same as going in grazing. So we don't have any residuals. It's after grass the whole time. So the covers we're going into are probably 1700s maybe.
Okay, still low enough.
1800s at push. But once you start going above that, you will see the fat starting to rise really quickly on the computer. The cows will no longer be able to eat 3 loads a day because they can't fit it because they're full of stem.
Well, the digestibility drops.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly that digestibility drops back, and it's a valid point. I mean, when you're grazing, it's having that willingly grazed down to a residual. You don't have to deal with that.
No.
But then find that optimal level that you are optimizing your digestibility and ME, your energy per kilo dry matter.
Correct.
Like some of the people I've spoken to with zero grazers probably go a lot higher, because they say we have to cover too much ground if we go much lower.
The cows won't perform. Like, you get what you put in. Like what we started doing as well there, Andre, because we couldn't obviously use the maize pit, we started baling the maize. So that was interesting from the point of view that we couldn't keep a feed face on the pit because you weren't using enough. So you might use it for a week and then you'd cover it down again. You'd find there was an awful lot of mold on the maize. It was bananas. So we baled it for 2 years. It was a brilliant job. It really was tremendous, because you could just go in at 2 bales a day if your deficits were really poor, or 1 if there were any slight deficits.
Yeah, still, I mean, it takes cows about 5 days for the rumen biology to change to be able to mobilise the value from maize as well. So it's not an ideal feed to fit into gaps, isn't it?
Perhaps, but it's still, along with bale silage as well, that we would have been taken off the paddocks, as I said to you earlier. It was an easy feed for him. It wasn't a dangerous feed as regards we'll feed maybe more I couldn't feed beet here because I didn't have the feed space to feed beet, so that was out of the question.
And
so.
you don't just up the meal like you.
Look, I didn't want to get into a system whereby we were feeding 2, 3, 4 tons a meal.
No.
I'm quite happy to feed 1 ton to 1.5 tons.
Yeah.
You
You're
want to
truly
see cows on the
pasture
farm.
based.
Yes, correct.
Truly pasture based, but zero grazing and robots. Yeah.
Yes,
So the system still revolves around that. And it's interesting. You haven't gone to a diet feeder.
No.
I mean, just something we spoke off camera before is about perhaps managing the feed quality in the shoulders a little bit better. That the silage now is going in at maybe 70 DMD at best. That there's perhaps some potential there to have
to
a
gain
little
a bit
better
more maybe at this time
in
of
the
the
shoulders.
year. Absolutely.
You know, first and foremost, you're still pasture focused and profitability focused. Yeah.
So
Is compaction an issue with the zero grazer?
probably driving in the same. You tend to generally drive in the same lines the whole time. Like if you're starting, you know, in the field at the same. The only time you really change it is the headlands are very wet. You might make the headland out farther out in the field.
Yeah.
So you're not going to be driving on the old headland too much. Zero grazing is a conventional way of driving. It's not a conventional way, I should say. You have to maybe think a little bit differently. You might start going to the middle of the field and work your way out. Then your sets might be too wide. You might make another set somewhere else. Try and keep your driving to a minimum. Really, is what you're trying to do. But no, the compaction is.
It's spreading the weight out as much as it can, and the width.
It's very wide. The machine is not over heavy. He had a contractor's model up there. I think it's about 1.5 tons heavier.
Right.
Steel. You know, while that's fine in summertime, it's not fine in the spring and autumn time.
No.
You need to be going in lightly.
How many loads a day?
3 of that full.
3.
Yeah.
Wow.
Of that full. So.
How long would that take you?
Well, depending on how far I have to go. Like that field outside, there's 32 acres in it, 33. I can be in out of there in probably 30 minutes, depending on the cover.
30 minutes per load, or?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
So
a couple of hours of work to feed the cows every day.
Yeah.
And then cleaning and liming the cubicles.
Yeah.
And then you have a lot more slurry, of course, because you've got that all year round.
Now, generally we contract out the slurry. Now, if my son is home or whatever, he'll spread with the tank and the tractor as well. But I suppose slurry is probably something we could even manage better. Like, instead of going out on dates that you're allowed to go out on, go out on dates that you want to go out on.
Yeah.
But to do that, you have to pay for it. You know, and it's expensive. Slurry storage is expensive.
Yep, absolutely.
I think going forward we're going to have to work that way, whether we like it or not. It's going to have to be the way it is. But I think people are going to have to realise too that the days of cheap food are coming to an end, or have already reached an end.
Yeah.
It's not going to be doable going forward. You can't have environmental protection and sustainable farming and farm incomes, on cheap food. They just don't gel together. So I think everybody's going to have to realise that going forward. And as a portion of income spent for people, food has been dropping over the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that has to just be corrected. I think probably people need to focus maybe more on food again and where it comes from. I think they've lost touch with that. And I think they will they'll have to find it whether they like it or not.